I think the only one we're still waiting for is Alan McDonald, but you do
He's
have.
here. I can see Alan.
I see.
I do
Ethan
think we are
Allen.
missing. We've got Ethan. We're missing.
Oh, I do see Alan. Never mind.
Who are we missing? We're missing.
I think Sylvia's not here.
Sylvia's here. She's
yeah,
grade
she
S.
The one we're still waiting for.
1,
is
2,
Alan
3, 4,
McDonald,
5,
but
6.
you do
He's
have-
here. I can see Alan. I think we're all here.
I see.
I do think we are missing. We've got Ethan. We're missing.
Oh, I do see Alan. Never mind.
John. We've got John, Troy,
Sylvia's
Ethan,
not-
Ed, Alan.
Oh, yeah, she is.
S.
Yeah, all seven
1,
of us are
2,
here.
3, 4, 5, 6. I think we're good. Here, I can see Alan. I think we're all here.
Yep.
Okay. We are missing. We've got Ethan. We're missing. I think it looks different because Austin's not here. We've got John, Troy, Ethan, Ed, Alan.
Yeah.
All right, let's get started then. Is YouTube set yet? It is.
YouTube is live. Yep.
Okay. All right, well, let's go. Okay, so welcome to the Planning Commission meeting for Alpine City, January 19th, 2021 at 7 p.m. We're doing a online public meeting as per the situation right now with COVID. So we want to welcome the commission members that are here with us: Troy Slade, John McKay, Ethan Allen, Ed Bush, Alan McDonald, Sylvia Christiansen, and myself, Jane Greiner. And from the city, we have Jed Bush, the city engineer, and Marla Fox.
Jed.
And we, pardon? What'd I say? What'd I say?
Jed Bush.
Oh, hey, politics are all the rage these days. That's hilarious. Jed Muhlstein. Wow, Jed, that's a new one for me. Never.
It's all right.
I must have been looking at Ed. Marla Fox, and we have a couple visitors with us. It looks like Don Bingham and Emily Cushing. So thank you for joining us. And to start with, we'll have an opening prayer by John McKay, and then Alan McDonald will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone will mute themselves except for the person speaking, it tends to work the best.
Our Heavenly Father, we come before Thee this evening at the beginning of our Alpine City Planning Commission. We invite Thy Spirit to be with us, that we might attend to the city's business as Thou would have, that we might be able to serve the citizens of our community. We're grateful for this land in which we live, and on the eve of the change of administrations in our federal government, we invite Thy Spirit to be across this land, that we might come together and be able to work for the greater good. We pray for these things now and do so in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Jed, are you going to put up a flag? And there we go.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. The next item on our agenda is public comment. If anyone has comment on any item that is not on the agenda, they can address the Planning Commission with that now. So do we have any submissions for that, Jed? And do any of the people on the call with us, Don or Emily, have something that they wanted to bring up at this point in the meeting? Okay. Jed, did we receive any emails?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself there.
Yes.
So we do have, it looks like so far there's about 70 people that are viewing the YouTube channel. There is a 30-second delay, so if there's any comments, we'll need to give them about 30 seconds for that.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody has asked if comments are working on YouTube. I replied, said yes. So far I'm not aware of any comments that have been emailed or sent for this part of the agenda.
For this portion of the agenda. Okay. All right. So we'll give that just a few more seconds to see if anyone has anything on YouTube that is for the public comment portion of our meeting. And okay, without any comment there, we'll go ahead and move forward and close the public comment. And then we'll move straight into our action items. So the first action item we have is a public hearing. This is addressing the accessory building setback exceptions. And this refers back to what we had some people bring forward to us in the comments, public comments of our last meeting. So Jed, do you want to introduce that for us? And then we'll open a public hearing and then we'll discuss and make a motion after that.
You bet. So at the last Planning Commission meeting, we had a few families bring up the idea of expanding the height for an accessory structure. And this is in regards to some sheds that had been built in their neighborhood. So what they are proposing is to extend the height of an accessory structure to 13 feet instead of 10 feet. And that is if it can be built within the setback area. So I should share, I'm not sure how to switch between share screens very easily here. I'd like to show, is this showing the ordinance?
This is showing the city. So I think you've shared the window that has the packet on it. So I think you have
Okay, so
to stop sharing and share your screen, or stop sharing and share the window that has the other item on it.
all right, we'll try that. So is that showing our city ordinance?
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
All right, perfect. So this is our current city ordinance. Under accessory buildings, I don't know if I should read this whole thing or just paraphrase here.
You can paraphrase. I think all of us are familiar with it and should have read through it. So.
All right, so the item of discussion tonight is this item D under accessory buildings, specifically the side and rear setback. It talks about when an accessory structure, if somebody wants to go within the side or rear setback, they can do so if it meets this following 6 criteria. And I do want to read the 6 criteria. First of all, the accessory building is located more than 12 feet from an existing dwelling on the same or adjacent lot. The accessory building contains no openings on the side contiguous to the lot line. No drainage from the roof will be discharged onto an adjacent lot. The accessory building shall be constructed of non-combustive materials or have fire-resistant walls rated at 1 hour or more. The building will not be placed on land designated as a recorded easement, such as a utility or trail easement, and the building will not be taller than 10 feet to the top of the roof line. And so what's being proposed tonight is this very last item. They're proposing to change that to say 13 feet instead of 10 feet. And so earlier today, and it's also in your packet, I'm gonna stop sharing this screen and then share the packet again. So in your packet, and this is the proposal of the residents, and maybe when I'm done talking, I will let them, or we can allow them to go over their proposal if they would like, or if the Planning Commission would like that. So I'm gonna scroll down here to where Austin pulled up the different codes of neighboring cities. And actually, I'm going to paraphrase these codes. So the residents mentioned that some of our neighboring cities did not have height restrictions, and that is correct. But I wanted to show what, when you dig into their code, I wanted to show what that actually meant. And so earlier this afternoon, I sent this file out to the Planning Commission. Did that go straight back to the, let me make sure I share the right screen here.
That was that file you sent us with the.
Oh.
Yeah, that's got that spreadsheet that's just got the chart.
All right, well, I don't see it on my end.
Oh, sorry. Well, we're looking at the accessory building code comparison. That's
All
just.
right, well, that's what I want you to see. I don't know why I don't see it on my side.
You might have to change your view.
All right, here we go. So this is what their codes basically boiled down to. So we're comparing our neighboring cities to our own code. First of all, is there a side yard setback for accessory buildings? And the answer is yes. Alpine is 10 feet. Lehigh's is actually same as the main building. American Fork is 5 feet, and Highlands is 10 feet. But the question is, with restrictions, does their code allow you to build within that setback? And Alpine, Lehigh, and American Fork say yes. Highland actually says no, which is probably good because they have a max height of 25 feet.
I know. They're very generous or liberal, or I'm not sure what the word is, but.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing is, do any of these codes allow you to build within a public utility easement? Highlands isn't specified. That's probably because they don't allow you to build within the setback anyways. But all the other cities do not allow you to build within the public utility easement.
Right.
And for Alpine, public utility easements are typically 5 feet on your side yard. And I want to say, I know it's 10 feet on the borders of a subdivision. I'd have to look up if it's 10 feet on the rear yard or not, but side yards are 5 feet. So anyways, that's the comparison. And then I know that the heights of these buildings and the viewscapes is one area that was considered when our ordinance was put together. But so was fire safety. And what was the other one? There was 3 of them. Let's stop sharing this. Anyways, I wanted to show you. That's funny, when I share a screen, my screen doesn't automatically pop to the screen I'm trying to share. So anyways, I thought it would be interesting in regards specifically to how one would view the height of a structure next to their property. I thought it'd be interesting to just do a simple AutoCAD drawing and just kind of look at this a little bit. So what I did here is I have 5 different scenarios and I let's zoom in on one of these. So I drew a house, and that house is 12 feet away from a property line. 12 feet is the minimum side yard setback for a main structure in Alpine City. Now, say, for example, the next property to the right, their house is further away, so they can have an accessory structure either at 20 feet, which is on the side yard setback, or if there's not a public utility easement and their 10-foot tall shed meets all of that criteria we mentioned earlier, then they can put it right on the property line. So now say you have a person sitting in this house, they're sitting by their window, which is by the fence. Their view angle is going to start from about 4 feet, and everything under 10 feet or everything under 20 feet is going to be blocked by their view. And what I did with the red line here is I proposed a 13-foot tall structure. And you can see the view angle that is made by that. So in this scenario, if there was no public utility easement and they could put it right on the property line, a 13-foot tall structure right on the property line would actually create more of a view blockage than a 20-foot tall structure at the setback would. So out of curiosity, we keep moving down. I said, all right, well, where would we have to move it to get the same obstruction angle is a 10-foot shed,
Mhm.
and you'd have to move it about 5 feet out to
Mhm.
get that same angle. And then I said, all right, what about the 20-foot shed? Well, you'd have to move it about 8 inches out to where it would equal what our ordinance allows for a 20-foot shed. And then over here, I thought, all right, well, let's try a scenario where we have a public utility easement, because you can't build within the public utility easement. In this scenario, a 13-footer would not block what ordinance typically allows for a 20-foot. Obviously, it's going to be taller than a 10-foot. And then in this scenario, to make it not any worse than a 10-foot shed, you'd have to go clear back to 13 feet. But that's not really what we're looking at tonight anyways,
No.
because you can put a 20-footer on the 10-yard or 10-foot setback.
10-foot setback line. Okay.
So anyways, I just thought some of those comparisons would be
Yeah.
kind of at least interesting to look
Yeah.
at and think about.
Mhm. It's a significant angle change. You didn't happen to calculate the degree difference in the angle, did you?
I did not.
Would be interesting.
Yeah.
My geometry teacher in me is coming out, but you can see the difference. But
So anyways, I thought that was interesting. I thought it'd be fun to share, just to give you some food for thought. So I will stop sharing
that's
that.
great.
And I'm not sure if I really have much else to share. I know there was 3 things that were important though. The fire safety rating,
Mm-hmm.
view height. I need to go back to our packet because Austin actually mentioned 3.
Let's see. Let me pull that back up. Let's see what the 3 things are before we open the hearing.
Oh, it was the public utility easements. That's what it
Oh,
was.
okay. Okay. All right, good. And in Alpine, a building permit, it's also interesting. I found a site that compares all of the cities, and it also shows which cities require a building permit and which cities don't. And so I'll share that link with everyone. Let's see, let me just put that link in the notes. I'll put that, let's see, I believe this will work. If I put this in the Zoom chat, then Jed, can you post this in the chat in YouTube? So click on that link and see if it comes up for everyone, because it might be different because of my search. I was actually searching for something specific, but this is from Apex Shed Company. They actually have a page that links every single city in Utah County and has whether or not they require a building permit and what the different things are. So I thought that one was interesting as well to show some of the differences. So, okay, so let's go ahead and now we will open the public hearing. Now, let me just really quickly, since we're not in person, usually we kind of go over public hearing etiquette, I guess, but we don't have to worry about people talking over each other here. But basically, what we ask you to do is go ahead and we'll go around and share. We'll have Jed read comments. Now, if you are on YouTube watching and you want to contribute, when we do a public hearing, people are not able to just say a sentence and then come back 2 seconds later and say another sentence. And so it's kind of not the same as a chat in a YouTube. So if you do have a comment that you want to make in YouTube, type your entire comment in and we'll read it. And that way, you can have your full time for a comment and then we'll go on to other people. But it's not really a forum to comment on other people's comments. We'll read your public input, okay? I've learned a few things doing these meetings on, on Zoom and on YouTube to make sure we have the same forum as we would for public comments. So then
And
if
from
someone else,
name and address too before
yes.
this.
And yeah, and anytime you comment, we'll need your name and your address first for the record. And then also, if someone else has made your exact same point, we ask that you don't make that point again. So if someone has made all the points you wanted to make, then you don't really need to comment if you have new information to bring forward. And so the purpose of public hearings in this situation is for you guys to have the chance to give your opinion, but also bring forth any new information that you might have regarding this or different situations that you've seen. And so we'll go ahead and open the public hearing portion of this. And we will give the people on the call the first opportunity to make public comment if they want. And then we will go to YouTube. And then Jed can read public comment that's been actually emailed in. So Dawn, do you have comment on this?
Yeah, so first, I apologize if I'm not understanding this correctly on the angles that Jed did.
First, Dawn, will you state your full name and your address?
Oh, yes.
No
So
problem.
Dawn, D-A-W-N, Dawn Bingham, and 680 West Willow Way.
Okay, thank you.
So on those angles, I just have like a quick question. I don't know if that's okay. So from my understanding, from the property line to the 20-foot structure next door, there was an angle. And then he showed some angle comparisons on the shed that would be on your own property next to the home you drew, Jed. And then, so you did angles from the 10 feet as well as 13 feet, right? So we're talking about angles that would block your own view?
No, it would be the neighbor's view. I could go back and pull that up if you wanted.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, he drew the neighbor looking out their window. If you had a 10-foot shed right on your property line versus a 10-foot shed 5 feet away from your property line. And right now, 10 feet away from your property line, a 20-foot shed is already allowed. So he's kind of comparing what's already allowed with a 20-foot shed versus if we had that 10-foot, and if we moved it to 13, how much would block, versus if we moved it 5 feet away and it was still 13, how much would block.
Okay.
So,
I'll just do you want me to just make a couple other comments?
yeah, go ahead and make your comments now. And then later on, we'll have Jed pull that back up. And if anyone has comment on that, we can do that.
Thank you. So on my, when I looked at Highland, this is just a note that was interesting to see kind of the comparison chart. When I looked at Highland, there were no setback requirements whatsoever if your accessory structure was under 200 square feet. That is something that I found super interesting. Of course, that's just one city, but, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I found. And so when we had looked at it, all of these sheds that we're thinking of are under 200 square feet. And we thought, if it can't be changed from 10 to 13 feet tall on that exception, if it can be changed to, you know, it can still be built within the setback if it's under 200 square feet. That's one thing I wanted to mention. And then just the fact that, you know, so many, we have over 100 homes that we've kind of noticed just from a drive around the city that look like they fall within this code infraction. And if we can't change the height from 10 feet on that exception, you know, when does this go from being infractions to kind of being a standard within the city? And we're talking homes that have been here for years, not just new homes, right? Because we're new homes and we understand that. So we were just thinking, you know, when there's over 100 homes, I'm pretty certain I could drive around and find 200 just based on my short little drive that I did. So when does this, you know, height of a shed become a standard? And that was kind of my other thought on the height thing. So I think that's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Dawn. Emily, did you have comments that you wanted to make? Or Emily, I can't hear you. For some reason, your audio isn't working. Let's see if we can get their audio to work. If not, we'll come back to you.
We were double muted. Can you
Now
hear
we can
us
hear you. Yes, we can hear you now.
Sorry about that.
And we can see you.
So, yeah, this is Emily and Travis. So we're both on here.
Go ahead and
Hi.
state your name and your address.
Yep. Travis and Emily Cushing, 648 West Willow Way.
Thanks.
And yeah, thanks for you know, all the thorough research to present this. It was really helpful to see everything. And I think the only comment we had was just on when Jed, I noticed you had the 5 drawings with the angles. I was just wondering if you, in the CAD, if it showed you, because I noticed on the 13-foot one, it was slightly bigger than, it went slightly higher than what the 20-foot angle was. Did it by chance show you at what height at the property line, you would meet the 20 feet or be slightly below? It looked like it was so close. I was wondering if 12'6" or 12 foot even, would bring you down below the angle, that was blocked by the 20 foot. That would be interesting, because I think even that's, maybe it's 6 or 12 inches makes a big enough change in the angle to put it at 20 feet or what's blocked at the 20 feet or below, So I was just wondering if that was something that came out of your CAD research and drawings.
Because all of our sheds that we're talking about are 12.5 feet and below. So if it was a difference between changing it to 12.5 feet versus not doing it at 13, if you would consider doing it at 12.5, because that would work for all of our sheds.
I could look at that and figure that out. I can't do it in the middle of the meeting though. But yes, I could find that information.
And then I had one other question. Do you ever do exceptions? And I only ask that because if you look in the packet that we submitted, our house is the one it has a huge structure next door that's part of their house. Our entire view of that entire side of our house is completely blocked by the neighbor's house because their house stretches back nearly to the end of their property line. And so the fact that we would have to spend, a couple $1,000s to get rid of a foot and 1 foot, 8 inches compared that entire house blocks any view at all over there.
Yeah.
And there's a picture of it. It's pulled it up. It's in that packet. You can see that the structure next door. So I guess I would have a hard time knowing that our view wasn't protected by the city, and allowing a structure to go that high. And then in the end, we have to, spend a couple $1,000s to remove a foot and 8 inches from a much smaller structure on our property.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick comment on the home building, if their home meets code, then their home meets code. But I totally get what you're saying because the way yours is angled. And just to answer your question, anyone can apply for exceptions.
Okay. Thank you.
People can always apply for exceptions. So, Jed, you have comments from YouTube that have come in?
Not regarding this subject yet.
Okay. And do we have any emails that were sent to you earlier in the day?
If we did, I apologize because Austin monitors that email, so I don't get that email.
Okay, so we're assuming he would have forwarded it to you if he had commented on this particular subject. So, okay, well, with no further public comment, then we'll close the public comment hearing of this item, and we will open it up to discussion for the Planning Commission members. So, basically, we are looking at making a recommendation to City Council if we think that this needs to be changed. So go ahead and let's hear everyone's opinions and what you've checked out.
Hey, Jane, this is Sylvia. Well, I was wondering if Jed could show that lower left, the dimension of angles again.
Sure.
So this is without the 5 foot.
The one with it right against the property line?
Yeah.
So that's...
And that is 10 verse 13 then, right?
Yes.
Right. So right against the property line, it's the same.
So the ones in question, the people that have brought these forth, are theirs against the property line?
Emily or Dawn, are your sheds, how far away from your property line?
Ours is 3 feet away.
Mhm.
Yeah, and ours is a foot away, but it's on an angle. So at one side it's actually a couple foot, and then
It goes from 1 foot to 4 feet. It starts at 1 foot away and goes to 4 feet.
Okay. All right.
Because
So
it's on a weird.
I would like to ask the Cushings if was their property surveyed? Are they sure? That's really close. Did you build your house?
Oh, sorry. Did you ask about our house or the accessory
Well,
shed?
I mean, obviously, if you built your house new, then you had a survey done.
Yeah.
She's just
And the house is. Are you asking about the house or the shed distance from the property line?
Asking how you know for certain that it's 1 foot away from the property line, because that's really close.
Oh, we're just measuring from the
measured it.
fence is all. So it's approximate.
Yeah, it's approximately 1 foot on one side, and then by the end of because it's the angle's kind of strange. So by the end, you're at 4 feet away from the property line.
So I think Sylvia's point is that sometimes if we haven't had a survey done, our property line isn't quite where we thought it was. And so she's concerned that 1 foot away could actually be on someone else's property. Typically, when people put a fence in, they bring it in onto their property, maybe 6 inches to a foot, just to make sure, so that's just a risk of if one of your neighbors went to sell and they did a survey, you can run into a problem if you're actually not on your own property.
I see.
Thank
Yeah.
Thanks for being my fence, Jane.
Sorry.
And no, I appreciate it. Another question that I have is, one of the parties last time said that they had electricity. So was either electricity or plumbing, did they get a building permit?
I'm not sure which person that was, but right now our ordinance says that you are required to get a building permit. And I believe, was ours all circumstances? I'm just trying to look at it really quick. Maybe Marla can chime in there. Marla.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. All 3 of these homes were required to get a building permit. And I do want to remind the Planning Commission that we do have a separate ordinance for custom pool houses.
Mm-hmm.
This little shed that goes up against the fence was never meant for this type of building. That is for like a little courtesy shed for little lawn tools and a lawnmower.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So they're 2 separate ordinances that I feel like we're jumbling into one.
So as in you are saying that there's accessory buildings, and then aside from accessory buildings, there is this exception for a very small utility shed to be against the property line or closer to the property line, which is why it's restricted to less than 200 feet and 10-foot height.
Yes.
And also,
and the other criteria, it can't be on the easement.
Right.
It has to be made of fire retardant material, no doors and openings, leaves,
Right.
rain and stuff. There's all that criteria, but I feel like at some point back in the day, maybe some residents were saying, hey, it's not really fair that we have to pull this little teeny shed 15 and 10. So they came up with this, I call it a courtesy ordinance for those type of sheds.
Right.
Anything above that. And last week, these sheds were all mentioned as being custom, would not fall under that. They would fall under the regular ordinance of 10 feet off and 15 feet off, and would absolutely require a building permit.
Okay. If the sheds are under 200 square feet, they do not require a building permit then? Correct?
No, they would still require a building permit if they have any plumbing or any electricity. And if they have none of those 3, they still need to call the city and work with me or Austin to find out where this building can be placed.
Right. Okay. I was just looking on a website online that did say, according to Alpine City, They follow the state requirements, which indicate that buildings under 200 square feet do not require a building permit. However, all buildings larger than 200 square feet do require a building permit. And then it links to our applications and things. But you're saying that they do not require a building permit unless if they have any electrical in them or plumbing, they do require a building permit.
Correct.
And in either case, they should check with the city to determine where they are allowed to put it because of easements for electrical and things like that.
And height, exactly.
Right, and things like that. Okay.
And
Thank
Jane,
you.
can I mention one thing too?
Yes.
All new subdivisions in Alpine City have a 5-foot public utility easement on the side yard lot lines. I could share. I'm going to share.
Yeah. I think that's one thing that, I think part of this situation is education.
Yeah.
Because
Here's the recorded plat for this development, and you can see there's 5-foot utility easements along all the lot lines, and then there's 10-footers on the border and in the
okay, so nothing could be within those no matter what, because they have a utility easement in those areas.
correct.
Okay.
So are we saying that some of these that have been built, like the one that we were just talking about, that thinks that within 1 foot is actually built within the public utility easement?
Correct.
It is. And so is the Bingham's, because theirs is 3 feet.
Right.
Where it needed to be 10, it needs to be 10 feet off the back and 5 feet off the side.
Right.
So if your particular subdivision did not have a utility easement, then you could go back. So, that brings up a whole nother situation. And, these residents have a great point. And I'm not excusing people not knowing what the ordinances are or anything, but how big of a problem is this in the city? And, if we have this, what should we be doing about it? Because obviously it's not working or people aren't aware of it. So that maybe is another issue as well.
I have a question that maybe Jed can answer.
Mm-hmm.
Jed, is my presumption that our code enforcer does not go around measuring sheds, but only goes to measure if there's a complaint put in? Is it complaint driven?
That's correct.
Yeah, and that's generally the case for our whole code enforcement program. We try not to be the kind that drives around the city and looks for problems. We're more the kind that waits till we get the call and then we go look at it.
So is it a fair assumption for us to make that a complaint has been registered in each of these 3 cases then?
Yes, that's the reason it's here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And the code enforcer did notify several other people as well, right? He did go to a large area and cover it, or just this neighborhood where the complaints were?
That I do not know.
Okay. So.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess one of the things that was bothering me as I was listening to this was that a builder built all these sheds. And you would think, I could understand that residents might not know the code, but I would think that a builder would know the code. I own a little sign company, and when we put in a sign, we go look up the code before we put in the sign, because we have learned that if we don't, we may be taking the sign back down. And it's not that fun to do that. So it bothers me a little that a building company would come in and build these sheds and not consult the code or know the code.
Yeah, that is.
Well, and also on the plans, there's a big red stamp that said all of these accessory buildings are required to have a permit. And these are all 3 brand new homes that would have that stamp on there.
From the original builder. If they were the original homeowner who built the home. And like the site that I shared with you is a shed company. And that shed company actually has every single city's code listed because they know they have to meet that code. So that's a good point. So
I guess, Jane, the only other piece of information I think I sent out to the Planning Commission afterwards is I did a quick survey on Home Depot to see what they offered in terms of wood sheds. And I would say 90% of them were 10 feet and under in terms of height. So obviously, and some of them being tough sheds that you can order through Home Depot. So, it does look more like a 10-foot height is more of a standard if you were to go and to buy a non-custom one that you could put in your yard. A lot of them are 10 feet and under.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I did look at that. I mean, there's quite a few that are 12 and 10, but I think with the understanding of what the purpose of allowing sheds, it's kind of, it really is a dilemma, because the purpose of allowing sheds inside these setbacks was this small tool type shed. I wanted to ask Jed, are you saying that all new construction has the easement around the entire lot, 5 foot on sides and 10 foot on the back?
In new developments, yes. There's
All new developments?
Yes, there is a lot of older lots around the city that don't have these, but
Mhm.
all of our new developments have it. It's required by our ordinance.
Okay. So if someone like these people who've had someone come in and build a custom shed for them, and it's a builder, do you know if, obviously there could be an exception made, but anytime a utility company wants to go through, they're gonna have to tear their shed down,
Correct.
which is why they're not allowed. I knew that you couldn't put permanent structures there, like concrete pad and things like that, but
Actually, we do allow flat work, but we do not allow a structure.
okay, so you could have a basketball court or something that went up to the property line,
Yes.
and then they would just, but you run the risk of having the utility company cut that out.
Yep. And perfect example too is like a driveway. There's a lot of driveways
That's true.
that are right on the property line.
Property line, okay, that makes good sense. So what we're looking at today is the height, which now seems sort of irrelevant, given some of the other information that we have. Other thoughts, Planning Commission members?
I mean, I'm just going to state the obvious. It seems like with, in addition to kind of a height problem or violation, we also have a public utility easement violation problem with these structures also.
And one other one is the fire safety. None of these buildings have been inspected to be able to verify they have the fire safety required by ordinance.
Well, this sounds to me like a little bit of a bigger problem that the city, we maybe need to address, is what should we do now that we're aware that we have, as Don mentioned, I believe that there wouldn't be a problem finding 100 sheds like this really easily. Do we need to have a bigger discussion about what we want to do about that, or what the city should do about that as well? That's just a thought.
And my concern is, I believe at the last meeting, they said that they all use the same builder for their sheds. Does anybody else remember them saying that? My point is, at any rate, I just think that the builder's thumbing the nose at us, his nose at.
Yeah, it's not, it's not very ethical of builder to not be following city's codes and to be building within their city.
Yeah, and they weren't all the same builder
Okay.
of the shed. Some of them were just contractor, independent, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Just like people finishing their basements. Yeah. A lot of contractors are like, do you really want to go to the city? Let's just finish it, And so, sometimes they encourage the bad and to not do that. So if we look at just the point of this proposal, irregardless of the other items that we've brought up, the question, I guess, still exists of, would you want to change it to be 12 feet or 12 and a half or 13 feet for, you know, a shed that is farther back into the property, which is, that's, if we were to summarize what we're doing, that is what we're looking at today, right? Jed?
So Jane, I guess I'd ask a question. Does anybody know the reason or the rational basis that the original code has a 10-foot limit as opposed to a 12 or 13-foot limit?
Well, I believe, you know, that Marla covered that by saying that really this was a kind of a courtesy statement in here to allow a very small shed to go in for tools and things like that. I'm guessing that that was probably a common height, because based off of Jed's drawing, what was the highest it could be, Jed, and still not change the and meet the same blockage as the 20-foot?
So I pulled a rabbit out of the hat and I did sneak back in, logged into my computer at work and looked at my CAD.
Thank you.
It's 12.57 feet on the property line would be the exact same view angle as the 20-footer at the 10-foot setback. And that is assuming there is no 5-foot public utility easement.
So to me, that makes sense to make it match the angle of the 20-foot, because you're not really gaining anything.
But the vast majority of our properties in the city now have the 5-foot utility easements.
Mm-hmm.
And so that will even come lower on the sight lines.
Right. And so
I think a 13-foot height restriction, assuming that most of our properties are going to be 5 feet off the property line anyway, is reasonable. But I think we've got a bigger problem with those easements.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't object to having people cited for infractions, because I don't think that's something that we're going to make exceptions for, is it?
Well, I wouldn't think so, not over an easement. If someone came in and there was actually an easement there, that's not really anything we're at liberty to make an exception for, because there's already an easement. We can't give the property to two people. We can't say two people can have access to that property. Wouldn't you think that's correct, Jed?
Yeah.
That you can't make an exception on an easement. So that is a bigger issue.
Where do we go from here?
So
well, it would seem like somebody would have to make a motion if they wanted to change it, right? And then we can discuss. So
yeah, I think if someone wants to make a motion, but this motion is strictly regarding the height of a shed that is within, so normally it would be 10 foot, right, Jed?
Yes.
So normally it would be 10 foot. So we're saying, what is going to be the height restriction of a shed if we allow them to go within that 10-foot area? And so
I guess the other question is, if we do relax the height condition, do we count in the height, do the weather vanes and cupolas and whatever get counted or not counted in that height?
So there is a comment on YouTube where they're asking to see online, or they want to see.
Yeah, that's in the Zoom chat.
Oh, is it? Okay.
The reference where it states you're required to get a building permit for structure under 200 feet. And that's in the building code, and I'll post that in here.
Thank you, Jane.
Yeah, my thoughts are that the design elements that might be like a cupola or something do not really significantly impact sight lines. And so I think to keep it consistent, if we just go with the main ridge, roof line, ridge would be an acceptable standard.
So
my question is, if you're going to change that little courtesy shed to come in closer, how far away is that going to be from our regular ordinance of 10 and 15? Are they only going to be a couple of feet away from each other? Is there a need for that ordinance? Or you just want to create one and not have two separate ones?
The second ordinance being 10 feet in can be 20 feet high.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's a point. Some of the things I noticed said that it was 10 feet high, and for every foot you came away from that property line, you could go X number of feet high. And if we did do that, then that could be combined into one ordinance. And that's what you're saying, Marla, correct?
Yeah, I don't think it makes sense if you change this ordinance to say it's no longer under 10 feet, but now it's going to be 13 or 15, then does it make sense to have a second ordinance that's just a few feet away from that?
Right. That's a good point.
I think it does, because you've still got lots that don't have easements. And so this will accommodate both.
That's a good point.
So I guess I will put out that I'm not inclined to make a new motion. So if we're waiting for.
If anyone would like to make a motion, but we don't have to make a motion if we have more items to discuss. Like if we have questions, let's keep discussing the questions or the points. Otherwise.
Well, I'd like to hear kind of wish Austin was here, but Marla's good to talk to too. So Marla, how do you feel about the courtesy shed, raising it a couple of feet? Since you work with it, 40 hours a week, what are your feelings about it? Because personally, I don't mind raising it 2 feet, like to 12 feet. But I would like to know what it's like for you in your world.
To me, it doesn't make sense if a family were to come in and say, can I have a shed? I go over with them. There's at least 4 different scenarios of where this shed can be placed. But now if you're saying, well, I want it closer to my fence and it's going to be 13 feet high, or it can be, 15 feet off the back. It gets really muddled and confusing to only change it by a couple of feet. So if they're going to get closer together, those setbacks, then I don't know if it makes sense to have 2 separate ones. Maybe you need to do away with the little lawnmower shed and just say, you know what, we're creating one ordinance for accessory buildings. Boom, here it is. If you live in this zone, these are your setbacks. If you live in the ½ acre to 1 acre, these are your setbacks. Because to me, when people call me to say, where can I put this shed and do I need a permit? It's 15 feet off the rear, 10 off the side. And then they say, oh, well, we've heard that it can be closer to the property line. And I say it can, but it's very strict. You have to meet all 6 of these. No exceptions, all 6 of these have to be met. And that's why I say any custom big pool houses, big things like that you want to attach and have an apartment, they always have to go by the 10 and 15 because and the one thing when people call me is I say, nobody seems to be able to meet the 10 feet. If you can tell me that your shed's going to be under 10 feet, we can talk about the other 5 criteria. And they all say, no, it's going to be over.
Okay.
So then they just have to move further.
Yes, so that's the main killer. If it's over 10 feet, you automatically have to go to 15 off the rear, 10 on the side.
There is a long way away from the rear of your property, though. I'm going to get a 12-foot, if the shed you bought is 12 feet to me. I understand, though, that was the purpose of it. But if you feel like I didn't look up what Ed said he looked up, and almost every shed was 10 feet and under. Did anyone else do any research on, say, you just go buy a shed? How tall are they?
Yeah, I did a little research and I came up with the same thing Ed did.
Mm-hmm. that most of the basic sheds, not custom, but basic sheds
Right.
are 10 foot.
So when we're talking about other structures though, as soon as you're talking about those buildings that are 20 feet in, a lot of people, that's a garage, right? And so that
Right.
is going to be a bigger structure. And that's why I think why that height requirement there is 20 feet.
Mhm.
And so I think, you know, I do think there's a need for two different kind of ideas, because to me, a garage versus a shed is a total different thing.
Now, are the sheds, in the case of the Bingham, the Cushings, are your sheds 200 square feet or are they bigger?
They're all less than 200 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah, they're less than.
So square footage wise, they're less than 200 square feet. They're just a little taller. Okay. And for those who are here watching, as the Planning Commission chair, I can't make motions. So we discuss it, and then one of the Planning Commission members can make a motion. We can make a motion to recommend something different than what was proposed. We can make a motion to table this and do more research on it and come back. If we wanted to, we could make a motion to just do some research on combining these into one ordinance. You know, any number of things. And so just have to kind of decide what we think is.
I mean, I'm with Ed as far as I'm not ready to make a motion on anything I've heard yet tonight.
Okay. What do you guys need to be able to make a motion? Do you think you need more information, or do
Well, I guess from my perspective, I'm not making a motion because I'm just wanting to let the ordinance stand.
Okay, so you can make a motion that's what it is.
Okay.
You can make a motion to not change the ordinance. That is an opinion. So I guess if you just for a little coaching, if that's what you want to have done, then you make that motion. If you think it should be changed, then you make that motion. So even if you think there should be no change, that is a motion in and of itself.
Okay, so let's at least try to move the commission.
Okay.
I'm going to make the motion that we leave the accessory building ordinances as they stand currently in our development code.
I
Okay.
will say that.
Okay, we have a motion by Ed, we have a second by Sylvia, and now we have.
Hey, real quick point of order though, is it a recommendation? Does Ed need to phrase it in the form of a recommendation?
Yes, if he didn't, Ed will just say you recommend.
Thank you. Now, I would recommend that, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, there we go. There we go. And that's one other thing I should point out is that the Planning Commission is a recommending body. We normally recommend things to the City Council. The City Council can then choose to agree with us or do what they want, and they can change it there. We're not the legislative body. So now let's have discussion on this motion. So, you know, any questions about leaving it the way it is versus making it slightly higher? Anybody have any discussion that they want to make?
I'm uncomfortable leaving 100 to 200 non-conforming structures in the city. I think we're just asking for trouble. We're going to be getting requests for exceptions on a regular basis if our code enforcement or people start complaining about it, or if we get some people that are upset that they got treated poorly, and they're going to make sure that everybody else that's not conforming is going to get reported. I think if we've got this big of a problem, we just need to address it. So I would not be in favor of voting for tabling this.
I have a comment on John's, which is that, I mean, we've heard some hearsay comments tonight about that from other residents of the city who have driven by and looked at sheds or buildings that they think are higher than 10 feet or think may be encroaching on a setback. But I don't know if they actually walked on. I didn't see any photographs with actual measurements. We don't know whether or not those are newer lots that have public utility easements on them or not. I mean, basically that's just some hearsay evidence, and
Observation,
I don't
yeah.
know that there's really anything concrete before us on whether we've got a major problem or not with respect to all these buildings. I mean, there hasn't been a flood of complaints in the city before now on any of this.
So
So
Alan,
I'm inclined to basically, I'm more inclined on Ed's motion. I'm inclined to follow Ed's motion and Sylvia's second personally.
are you thinking though that we should have more, table this and have more research done to find out actually what the situation in the city is?
Well, I think what was persuasive to me was just listening to Marla. I mean, she's really dived in on exactly what happens if it's 90% of the sheds that basically just hold garbage cans and weed eaters and lawnmowers, 10 feet or under, 200 feet or smaller, and they are accessory outbuildings as opposed to these, much larger sheds that tend to be more accessory type buildings. And so, it just sounded to me like with the way that Marla applies the current ordinances, it's very cut and dry, right? Which is your shed 10 feet or smaller? Where is your lot? And then she quickly can apply either circumstance 1 or circumstance 2 to that. Sounds to me it's frankly working pretty well for those who do inquire, and those who don't inquire at your own peril.
Okay.
I'm more likely to think we should have a fine for someone that does not inquire. That would be my gut reaction. I mean, there's no cooperation if you're not cooperating, how can we have a civil city?
And I did talk to the city, or I did talk to them about putting these kind of things. I think we need to make more of an effort to put them into the city newsletter and things like that to help people be aware. I don't think people are usually of malicious intent, but thinking like, it may cross their mind that they should talk to the city, but don't really know for sure. I don't think it's a malicious thing, but I do think we need to educate people and also let them know that the city does require that. We do need to follow the ordinances to make our city orderly, developed. There's a reason for it. And it also protects them from like the utility company going through and saying, hey, tear your shed down and rebuild it,
Well, I would say one other point there, Jane, to that is what was the date of the current ordinance and how many of these outbuildings or accessory buildings might be already grandfathered in? Those are all things that we really don't know.
Yeah.
You can drive around and see something that you think is non-conforming, but it may be grandfathered in based on the date of the ordinance.
Yeah. Jed, do you have the date of that?
Say that, Alan. Alan, thanks for saying that. I was just going to bring that up. The ordinance was written, I don't know how many years ago, but there was a whole lot more homes and sheds in the city before the ordinance was written.
So, and then one more thing that I think is this was brought before us because that was found to be code. And it sounds to me like they have far more serious things to worry about than the height of their building. I mean, the fact that there was no survey done and that it's within 1 foot of their property line without a survey means there could be big problems there. And the fact that both of them have admitted that they're within 5 feet of the known property lines. So that's why
I think their builders have issues the same way a fence builder is going to have an issue who builds a fence on somebody else's property.
Exactly. And I don't think it's these people's fault. They probably trusted their builder completely,
Yeah. Troy, do you have anything you want to add?
I apologize. I kind of got cut off during Jed's presentation.
Oh, sorry. No problem.
I do have one question. Did Jed, was your presentation kind of saying that you could move it closer to the property line, have it be a little taller, and it wouldn't affect your view? Sort of?
No, it was more or less just trying to show the comparison of like, what would your view angle be if we allowed this ordinance to go through? So in some cases, it's worse than a 20-footer at your 10-foot setback, and in other cases, it's not. It's more or less just to compare how it would affect things.
Okay, yeah, because that's what I had going around in my mind. I'm just like, well, if it's doesn't really affect your sight line and we can move it closer, then
Or make it higher.
But then what you're saying, so okay, yeah. So I kind of tend to, I believe, go with Ed, I think, and
Mhm,
what he kind of proposed, I
mhm.
don't really see a
Yeah.
good reason to change it.
No, the only thing I thought of as far as changing it goes is if it doesn't change the sight line, this is just another point of view, but if it doesn't change the sight line to have a 20-foot building that is 10 feet off versus a 12.5-foot building that is right on the property line. If that doesn't change the sight angle at all, then it seems like it's kind of the same.
Well, yeah, that was my point. That was my question, kind of. So
Mhm.
it doesn't, then it's sort of the same.
Let's put this to a vote.
Yeah, he was saying we could
Let's
go.
get Troy's question answered though first. So, Jed, can you show that one more time really quickly so that Troy can have his question answered since his internet went out while you were presenting that?
Yeah, because if it's the same, then why would we want to move back in? Guess.
So
I guess my comment to that is we seem to be driven by sightline being the only reason why we have a height requirement there. I mean, so not everybody is going to build a 20-foot accessory building
Right.
10 feet away from somebody.
No, but the height requirement is because of the sight angle. That's why we have a height requirement, isn't it?
I'm not sure that is it, or it sounds like that they looked at what was kind of a standard height of
Maybe.
kind of tool shed and decided that would be a good thing rather than what would it look like always with a 20-foot building next to somebody's property, right?
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of these folks' properties, this is the exact scenario we're talking about right now. Right now, current ordinance would allow a 10-foot shed right on the 5-foot public utility easement line. So that is your angle of view, your view angle for a 10-footer. A 13-foot shed, you're above it, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm not sure what else you want to see on that.
No, that's good. If it were within the 5-foot, it's obviously slightly higher. So, okay. Well, are you guys, any other discussion anybody wants to make? Okay. So, I just want to remind everyone that voting aye means you agree with it, and voting nay means you disagree with it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you disagree with changing it. It can be any number of things. Maybe you wanted it tabled so that we can do more research. Maybe you wanted to, so that's the difference in what we want to propose here. So right now, the proposal is that we just leave, the recommendation is that we leave it the same. And so we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. So John McKay.
Nay.
Ethan Allen.
Aye.
Ed Bush.
Aye.
Alan McDonald.
Aye.
Troy Slade.
Aye.
Okay. And Jane Greiner. I'm going to say nay. I actually want more research. I'm not sure what I want to do here. So that's okay.
Sylvia.
Oh, Sylvia.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So we have 5 ayes. And so that will go to City Council with a positive recommendation. Will it go to City Council? I guess it will.
Yes, it's a recommendation.
So that will go to City Council, and then they can decide what their thoughts are on if it should be changed or not.
Can I just review that? So John McKay voted nay.
Nay. And I voted nay.
And
everyone else voted aye. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And personally, I would like to learn more about this. So we'll move on to our second action item. Also, Jed, can you pass on the question of what does the city want to do with all the sheds that are actually in a utility easement?
You bet.
And what we want to do about helping people change or notify them or whatever. So, like I said, this is, I think, uncovered probably a bigger issue than the height. Okay, so our next item on the agenda is the discussion of the temporary sign ordinance. And this is one that I requested come forward. So Jed, do you want to bring this up and cover it?
You bet. If I can find the right screen. So on this one, Austin essentially told me that he wanted it to be back on the agenda for discussion. He did not prepare any kind of big staff report
Okay.
to go over and discuss. So to be honest, I'm not sure exactly what we want to look at as far as specifics of this ordinance.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, I asked to look at this because I had a few questions. The one is there on the, what's it called? The building complex that has all the unique buildings that are part of Alpine's history. There are frequently vinyl signs, and there's some iron rods posted into the ground there that stay all the time. And then these vinyl signs go up on occasion. And then the other question I had was, we have the trailers that have vinyl wrapping on them and that are parked, in someone's driveway, so that it essentially creates a billboard, and the trailer doesn't appear to ever be moved. And there's also a trailer parked in the parking lot of the business parking lot that's the same, that are essentially signs, in my opinion. And I just wanted to know what our ordinance says about temporary signs, and if we have people adhering to that, or if that needs to be looked at, or what. So let's just kind of review what these banners are permitted. Temporary signs attached to buildings are permitted. And it has a height restriction on them. What about signs that are not attached to a building? So grand opening period, temporary signs announcing the initial opening of a building, relocation or change of ownership. No more than 2 signs should be allowed per location. Special promotion period. So this is if they have a sale. Businesses can apply for 3 special promotion periods during the calendar year. Each period may not exceed 14 days. These periods may run consecutively. No more than 2 signs shall be allowed per location, including businesses located within a planned commercial development. Signs shall be placed at least 20 feet apart. So would you say that this is what's happening with those vinyl signs, that they're promotional periods? Any thoughts on that?
Does Marla have any feedback for us on that? Do people actually apply for promotional signage?
People do, and we have our regulars that are down there. Austin's pretty familiar with them. Sometimes we have a little bit of competition where one business owner will say, hey, this other business is hogging all the space out there with their vinyl signs, or we feel like they've had them up way past. So sometimes, they battle on each other. But for the most part, and I think if Austin drives by and sees something up, he will call. So yeah, I think sometimes things slip through if it's a holiday weekend and we're not here,
Okay, but that is what they're doing there then in that area, is they've applied for promotional periods. They can do 3 promotional periods during the calendar year. What about this? No more than 2 signs per location, and then signs shall be 20 feet apart. What does that mean? Because
those are probably the ones that you're seeing staked out there on, by Main Street.
And there's 2. They're not 20 feet apart.
Yeah, that probably would need to be monitored, but I guess I don't know how you feel about that. Do you think
I
feel
don't
like
know.
it junks up? Does it junk up, that roundabout area? Or
I don't know. I think it's okay. I just mostly wanted to know, like, what is the policy? And if one person starts doing it and then somebody else starts doing it, somebody else starts doing it, and then you end up with vinyl signs all over the place, you know?
Yeah, I feel like we're trying to not be, you know, a big city like Orem or Provo or something where you can't really stay quaint and cute with a ton of signs out, but they also want to be fair to business owners and let them advertise. So I think they're trying to come up with something that's fair, where they can have a chance to advertise. So
okay. So going through, can you keep scrolling down through this? Community civic events, people, permits shall be required. This is like the stuff that gets hung on the church's fence. Do people apply for a permit for that, or do they just ask the church if they can hang their vinyl sign on the fence?
I think that's the only place that we don't have jurisdiction over. And I think that kind of got out of control, and that's when they started putting up their, sometimes I've seen signs there that say no signs on the fence.
I have too. So if it's on private property, we don't have any jurisdiction on it?
I don't think so. So I think if someone wanted to put a yard sale sign out and they asked a neighbor if they could put it there, then they can. They just can't come down and put those all in the roundabout and down Main Street.
Is there any kind of time restriction that someone can have a sign up, like on the fence?
I'm not sure how the church runs their fence. And I know that the Gokeritz property was getting quite a few too. That's where you'll see all the welcome home for the missionaries. And so I don't know if, I probably think a lot of people put them there because they see everyone else do it.
For sure.
I don't know if they're asking permission, but those types of things we would probably look into if we got complaints. So, but all the businesses would have to follow this 14-day rule.
Okay. What?
Jane, if you scroll down to number 4, church homeowners associations and school information signs don't require a permit. It says.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't finish reading through this entire.
Yeah, I read it somewhere.
I spent all my time researching sheds, not reading this one. So, that's great. Okay, so there it does say no more than 14 days, so they can't have it. So this is where my question is about the trailers with signage on them. I don't know, what do you guys think about that? I mean, so far there's only one person doing it, but it concerns me. And
Jane just said, I've kind of brought this up one time before too. It concerns me too that if other business owners want to have the same idea, which is to say, well, we have a mobile capability and we need a trailer that they can roll trailers out, to the edge of the parking lots and just keeping there. And, to me, that really serves more as a billboard kind of thing. And I'm concerned that, again, I know we have one, but, we get started to have 2 and 3. I don't know if we have anything that would restrict that.
Well, if that, so that's I guess what I'm wondering is the 14-day, like if that is someone who has a landscaping business and they load up their trailer and they take it with them every day, or is that just, and it literally goes nowhere?
Jed, can you help me with this? The one trailer that you're talking about, Jane, that person actually had 2, and they were parked over at the business in the parking lot.
Right.
I want to say that we had a court case on that. And Jed, if you're remembering this, correct me. I think the outcome was that it could not be parked over at the business for long periods of time. Business owner could use it for his business coming and going, but we had no jurisdiction of him parking it on his own property in his own driveway.
You're correct.
He just happens to benefit from living where he does.
Okay.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. And so, because I have noticed that there's one in the parking lot of the business still and one in the driveway.
Yeah, so the one in the business should be coming and going and not be stationary as a billboard.
Leave there. Okay. All right. And the one in the driveway just happens to be, like you said, good luck because they live there. Even though it seems to me like it almost qualifies as a sign that is on private property, which would have a 14-day, but I suppose that is, would be probably hard to say that.
You
it's
have a
actually
good point
sign.
there, because if you get a business license, his wife is allowed to have a sign for her business, but it has to meet the sign criteria.
Mhm. Right.
So that is a good point about the big billboard sign. I don't.
And well, it never moves.
Mhm.
And so
Maybe it'll get moved a few feet when a new building goes in.
maybe so. But other businesses, I just want to make sure, I guess, I just wanted to understand this better so that as we do get other businesses, as well as businesses maybe do, sales and things like that, I kind of wanted to understand this a little bit better. So that actually helps me understanding the history of that. Does anybody else have any questions or things that they've noticed or are concerned about?
I guess the private residence is what makes the exception here from other businesses kind of doing the same sort of thing, right? It just so happens that that one's on a private residence.
Yes, but it's also in the commercial district, and he has at least one or two businesses out of his home. They've got a recording studio and they have a hairstyle salon there, and they're advertising the and they just have their trailer parked there. So it's just for me, it's just a little bit of a concerning precedent that could grow into a problem. It's not a problem so much now because only one person does it, but it is a rather large icon when you pull into the city. Okay, well, that's pretty much, I just wanted to understand what that was. Does anybody else have any other questions on signage? I think it's good for us to know what the ordinance is. And I think it might be nice for us in the future to bring like one thing like this on our agendas when we have a lighter agenda so that we're just more educated on different things. So if we can all just take a little bit of time to read through this, it shows Alpine Day signs, activity sponsored signs, church signs, private property signs, I think it's just a good thing to be aware of, and to, like I said, continue to educate ourselves a little bit more on each section of the code. So,
Well, I would like to ask a question. How, when we do open houses, you've all seen the open house signs that we send, maybe on private property or whatever, but how, where do they fall in this? Just those little signs that are set up like on a little tripod or sandwich boards, I guess they're called.
Well, I think that would maybe be a promotional period, or.
So you would need to get a permit actually for that to be legal.
I'm not sure about that. Marla, what about that? If somebody who's a realtor just wants to set up some directional signs and then a sign out in front of a house that says open house.
I would probably talk to Austin about that, because I know a lot of the signs that get stuck in the ground get taken out, advertising for soccer camps and for snow removal, painting your house, things like that. They all get removed.
I know directional signs are not allowed by ordinance.
Okay.
Even with a permit, huh?
On city property.
You can ask a private owner of a home or a business, hey, do you mind if I put this sign on your property today to direct people to this open house? You can do that.
That's what we usually do, but occasionally, I just was wondering.
Yeah. And any signs that are approved by the city, there's only like 4 places that the city has approved that you can put a sign. And maybe, Jed, do you remember where those 4 areas are? They're the entrances to the city, I think, or?
I really don't. I try to stay away from the whole thing.
We'll ask Austin. We'll ask Austin next time.
I know where they are. They're
where are they,
the
Marla?
corner of Westfield, by the school when you're coming out at Ranch.
Right.
They're over on Ridge Drive coming off of Canyon Crest.
Okay. Okay.
They are at the entrance of Alpine by the Alpine sign.
Right.
And there's one here at the corner by the gazebo.
Okay.
And
Great.
that's going to be, yeah.
So that's
certain
technically the
criteria.
only place. Yeah. And so like, for example, if you're having an election for city council, those are really the only places you can put a sign unless you go ask the property owner's permission. And then you can put signs on other people's property. But those are the only 4 places. If you have approval from the city to put a sign, that's where they go.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, any other questions on that? Thanks. I just have been thinking about that and wanted to look at it. So appreciate that. If anybody, you're always welcome to have something that you want to know more about or have questions about, put on the agenda. Just talk to Austin about it. So, okay, let's see. Are there any communications that anyone has tonight?
I guess I just have a question, and I don't know if it's sensitive to the city at this, but I've had some people ask that about Blue Bison in the appeal, and they have not heard anything that had been published or any comment from the city. So I don't know if that's something that's a issue of sensitivity or negotiation that's going on. But anyway, I know people are asking.
Is there somewhere we can get an update on that?
The update is we have not heard back from the appeal officer.
Okay. So we're waiting to hear back.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other communication? Okay, let's go on to the approval of our minutes from our meeting on January 5th. Did anyone have any changes or do we have a motion on that?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the January 5th, 2021 Alpine City Planning Commission meeting.
Sorry, I was muted.
And Sylvia, would you like to second that?
Well, if you look at line on page 1, it doesn't have an end to it. It starts something and then it doesn't end. And I think it's your statement on having electronic meetings.
So I think correct. Yes, that I saw that does need to be finished. I'm trying to get that statement from Austin so that I can type that in, and then there's just,
okay.
You can send it to me.
I can email that to you, Marla.
That would be perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, great. Any other, so do you want to modify your motion, John? Or who made the motion? Was John, wasn't it?
Yeah. Recommend approving the minutes from January 5th with the change of adding the electronic meeting statement.
Okay, we got a motion by John. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Oops, second by Sylvia or whoever else said it. Sorry, Ethan. She was quick to the draw on that one. Okay, and all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, one thing I did want to note is it's just on the agenda, so it doesn't matter, but it does say January 5th, 2020, not 2021. And then at the bottom, it says Chair Jane Greiner, January 15th, 2020.
Okay.
And it's actually January 19th, 2021. I don't know if those matter because it's just the agenda, but.
For today's agenda?
Yes, if you look at the Planning Commission meeting agenda, at the very bottom, it shows approval of Planning Commission minutes, and it says the 2020, and then it says adjourn, and it has my name, and it says January 15th, 2020.
Okay, I'll look at those. Thank you.
So, yeah, no problem. Okay.
Jed, did you see any comments coming through? I'm surprised we had that many visitors with no comments.
You know, I actually told you wrong. We have 71 subscribers, but there's only 8 people actually watching.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I was like, wow, that's 70. Wow, somebody must really know what we're talking about tonight. So, well, thanks, Jed. It made us feel important anyway. Like, we cared what we were doing. Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Adjourn.
Okay, we've got a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Sure, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by, let's say Alan, and a second by Ethan. So Alan and Silvio did it together. All in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye.
Okay. It was unanimous. We're adjourned.
Okay.
good job, Jane. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Marla, are you still there? Marla?
Yes, I'm here.
Also, the very last line, it says the meeting was adjourned at 8:40 space 4 p.m., but that's just a typo, so you can just change that.
Okay. Yeah,